She should be coming on in 1 minute. 1 minute. Hello. Hi.
Hello.
How are you?
It's so nice to meet you.
Yes, we finally get to meet each other.
What a treat. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Oh, thank you so much for coming and taking time out your schedule to join us today. So I just want to say welcome to the Sisters with Books book club. And we are grateful to have the author on with us today. I just want you to tell the people your name and who you are and what it is that you do.
Sure. Happy to. My name is Hope Edelman. I am the author of the book Motherless Daughters. I have a copy right here. And also Motherless Mothers, another book called The After Grief, and a couple others. I write about bereavement, and I started motherlessdaughters.com about 10 years ago that offers support groups and services and community to women who lost mothers at any age.
Okay, thank you for sharing that information with everyone. I just want to tell you how this book came about. I lost my mom in June 25th of this year. And Tabitha Werloff Franklin, she's on with us today. And the book club as a whole presented this book to me at my mom's repast.
Mm,
And I was so happy. And I was looking for a book during the time before the funeral. And I just did a search on Google and I really wasn't too good. I wasn't too settled on with the book that I found. I was like, well, I'm gonna just come back to it later. I just did a quick search. And so when she presented the book to me, I was just like, I was speechless. So once I got the book, I said, okay, I'll read it. And I said, well, we got to have the author on, hopefully. And I reached out to you probably immediately. And here you are today. And I said, we're going to discuss this as a group because there were several members of the group that also have lost their moms, Tabitha included. And so I just want to say thank you, Tabitha, for giving me this book and letting us review it today and talk about it today.
Of course. I actually someone actually gifted it to me when my mom passed. So that's why it's like, anytime that happens, it helped me so much that I try to pass it along to my other sisters in grief.
Tabitha, how long ago did your mom die?
She died March 7th of 2021.
I'm so sorry. It's just like a primal loss, isn't it?
Yes,
Right?
it's
It,
been heavy.
this is one of the few people in our lives who's completely irreplaceable and with whom we have a relationship that is deep, and I mean it's lifelong, right? Ever since
Hmm.
we came out of her body or were put in her arms if we were adopted. It's the longest relationship of our life, that and our dads, of course, but more primal because of that physical connection to our moms. Yeah, I really appreciate you having me here, Tanisha. And did your mom die in June? I'm sorry, in this
June
year?
25th. Yes,
So
June
you
25.
you mentioned something called a repass. Is that an anniversary? Is that a
No,
I'm
they
not
just, it's
from
after the service. They just have food and the family
oh
and friends. Yeah.
oh, I get it. Because I've been looking for a term that's better than death anniversary. Something that acknowledges the passing of another calendar year without them and going through a cycle without them. Haven't found one yet, but I thought that might be what you're referring to.
Um, so let's go ahead and just get started.
Sure.
Um, so the book version that we have is the anniversary edition. And I want to just let people know that. And it includes 99 motherless women interviewed in person and by mail, as well as data from the original motherless daughters surveyed in 1994 and an internet survey of 1,322 motherless mothers conducted between October 2002 and June 2005. The age is the youngest is 17 and the oldest is 82. So I just want to let people know that there are different versions of this book. Um, so I just want to start with the first question. Your trip after your mom died, after your trip was to the local library. And please explain that.
Well, I was young. I was only 17 when my mom died, so I was a bit younger than you all. And I was just a big reader. And I felt like, okay, the adults around me don't seem to know how to guide me through this. And it was 1981. For anyone who's listening or watching who was a child or teenager when their mom died, maybe they lost their mom in the 80s or the 90s when grief services were really not available to families or in communities other than extended families or religious groups. And we didn't have a big extended family, and we weren't involved at that time in a religious group. So we didn't have any support. So I went to a library thinking, well, maybe there'll be a book about what girls should do when their moms die. And I didn't find one. I went to bookstores. We didn't have Amazon yet, of course, in 1981. So I, used the resources that were available to me. And when I went to college, I used to go study in the library. And then when I was done with my studies, I would go to the psychology floor and walk up and down the stacks looking for anything about mother loss when you were a daughter. And all the books were about if you were an adult when your mom died, because statistically, that was so much more likely to happen. I couldn't find anything. And that's why I wrote the book myself 10 years later, or started the book 10 years later. But I really needed just some kind of resource that would say, hey, this is what it feels like to lose a mom. And it's not going to be like something that you can just sort of march through in a series of stages, because the 5 stages of grief were such a dominant model for how to move through bereavement at that time in the 1980s. It didn't feel right, but I couldn't find validation for anything different.
Tabitha, you have a question?
I do. I know I'm gone. So, the question that I want to start with is I read the original book, the book that you know, because again, it was a few years ago that was given to me. And because we were reading this today in a book club, I actually read the 20th anniversary. So,
Different.
one question I want to ask is I want you to kind of talk about your journey with the difference. And I know you touched on the book, and I want you to speak about that. And also too, I want you to speak about how you, because as someone who my daughter, I had children older. My daughter was 3 when my mom passed. And something that I frequently said is I don't know if I would have had children if I had known what losing a mother was like, just because I carry that guilt of how one day I'm going to leave her and I'm not going to be there to comfort her. So that's something that frequently plagues
Yeah.
me. And I don't know if I would have had a daughter had I lost my mother before. I really asked myself that, and I really don't know the
Really?
answer. So I want to know. I want you to talk about how you still decided to have a family, even though you knew what it was like to lose your mother.
God, that's such a good question, because I work with a lot of women who are really reluctant to have children. I won't say afraid, because I'm not sure it's a fear. I think it's more of a reluctance to have children for 2 reasons. One, because they know what it feels like to be a daughter who loses your mother,
Hmm.
like you're talking about. And second, because they're afraid of loving something that much and then having the risk of losing them. Because when you lose a mom, there's always now you know what it's like to lose someone who's that important to you. Um, so I always wanted to be a mom,
Hmm.
but it came very unexpectedly to me. I was not planning to get pregnant at the time that I did, and I was very happy and very grateful. My daughter was very much wanted, but she
Hmm.
wasn't planned. Um, I don't know if there's any other way I would have become a mom for the reasons that you're outlining, Tabitha. Would I have done it intentionally? I can't tell you that because that wasn't an option for me.
Yeah.
But it did feel like a leap of faith. And then when I found out it was a daughter, I really cried
Mm,
because I felt like, for two reasons, because here I am now in the middle, right? I'm knowing what it's like to be a daughter who loses a mother, and I'm going to learn what it's like to be a mother of a daughter. And those are two very profound experiences, but for me, they were very linked.
mhm.
And so how old's your daughter now?
He's 7.
Oh, she's sweet, sweetie. She's
Mhm.
little.
Yeah,
She's
that's what I
7.
mean. Yes, yeah, I became a mom older, and my mom was young when she had me, so I had her for a long time.
Right.
Don't get me wrong, but it's never long enough. But I did have her for a long time. I had just made 43 when she passed, so I had her for a significant amount of time. And I know that's a lot of difference too. When you spoke about that too. You being 17, 43, that whatever age it is, we have to, we still have to negotiate being without her. Is it better to have her longer and lose her, or not as long? All of those questions I know you asked, and I wondered that myself because I have a brother who's significantly younger than me. Because my parents, since they were so young when they had me, they had my brother, they planned him. And so, when our mom passed, he was 25, you know what I mean? And I always felt like he was robbed, you know what I mean? So, and we have the same parents, but we have different experiences, him being a boy and him not having her as long, So
Sure.
again, we have to negotiate different things. I was married, my mother was at my wedding. He wasn't. He thinks about that, him getting married
Yeah.
without our mom being there. So again, there's different things to negotiate depending on, when you lose your mom.
Absolutely. And what we find at Motherless Daughters is that age of time of loss is really the most significant factor
Hmm.
for um, for influencing a daughter's experience. And we don't ever say one is better or worse, easier or harder, because
Right.
that's so dependent on so many factors, right? Like how your mom died, what kind of relationship you had with her, what kind of support was available to you, all of that. But it is different. It's
Hmm.
different to lose a mom when you're 6 than when you're 26 or 46. It just is different. And we honor those differences and we try to educate each other about what that experience is like. To
Hmm.
lose a mom when you're 6, if you barely remember her, but then don't have her for the rest of your life, what happened after your mom dies really affects your personality. What kind of systemic, cultural, or family issues you were exposed to um, will shape your personality as you grow up and your ability
Hmm.
to adapt and cope. But to lose her when you're 46 means, oh my God, she's been in your life every day for 46 years. How do you wrap your mind around her no longer being here? That's a very different experience than being a child who grows up without a mom. And because our programs cover the whole scope of mother loss at any age, we feel it's really important to, and by we, I mean me and the people who work with me, the team feel it's really important to acknowledge those differences. And we have some programs that focus just on age at time of loss for that reason. And then we have other programs that bring people together of all ages. Because no matter how old you were when your mom died, if she's not in your life today, you're navigating the world without her. And so, we do both. Yeah.
Hmm.
But I fully appreciate, your brother's experience. He didn't get to go through those major life milestones without your mom that you did. Do you feel like you are a mother figure to him or not really?
Yes, and he does too. I was 17 when he was born. I've always been a second mom to him. He's always given me flowers on Mother's Day. So it's like he does. I think before my mom shift, he thought more like aunt because, he does tell me a lot of things that he never told our mother, and we are very close. So he kind of thought cool older aunt. But since my mom has passed, and he doesn't get a lot of things he necessarily needs from my dad, just for a variety of reasons. He does come to me to get those things. So since
Totally
my mom passed, it
understandable.
has definitely shifted to more of a mother son relationship. But
Mhm.
but again, it's still very open, you know what I mean? Like, again, he tells me things that I'm thinking if I was his mom he wouldn't tell me.
Um, I have another question, of course, lots of questions here. Um, I want you to talk about the letters from the beginning of your book. You talked about the letters from the post office. I want you to tell the people about that.
Oh gosh. Okay, so we have to dial back to the 1990s. And I'm going to feel ancient, but we have to go back to pre-internet days. It was the 1990s when people were just getting email addresses and authors didn't have websites yet. I mean, now all of my information, all of my, contact with readers comes through email or Instagram DMs or Facebook DMs, but we didn't have any of that back then. So the way that you would reach an author if you read their book and wanted to contact them was by writing a letter to the publisher. And when Motherless Daughters first came out, I think women felt like, oh, I finally have permission to tell my story. I've been holding it inside. I've been carrying it in silence. My family wouldn't talk about it. There was no place for me to go to be heard. And now there's permission for me to tell my story. And so they would write their stories down, either typed or handwritten, often handwritten on notebook pages, pages and pages, and send it to me. And it was so cathartic for them to, be able to tell their stories. So it got to a point where I needed a PO box because I didn't want to give out my home address at the time. And I remember once going to the post office in Greenwich Village. I was living in New York at the time, and I went up to the desk and I gave my PO box number, and the woman went back to get my mail, and she came back with like a mail sack, like Santa Claus carries, one of those big mail sacks filled with letters. And I thought, oh my God. But I also felt this incredible obligation because every single letter was a woman who had sat down to pour her heart out on the page. And I felt an obligation to read every one of them. So I did. And I sat down and I started reading them. And that's when I realized, oh, these stories are really different based on age at time of loss. And I started like literally making piles in my living room for like, it took me a week to get through the mail sack. There were so many letters. And this was just like 1 week or 2 weeks worth of letters. But I started creating piles in my living room. Okay, these are women who were 12 and under when their moms died. And that also corresponded then with how long it had been since their moms died, because the ones whose moms had just died had really specific stories, and the ones whose moms had died maybe 20 or 30 years ago had different stories. And it was also very based on culture and geography and age at time of loss and how their moms had died. There were so many different factors, but I started making piles in my living room. And from that, I realized, these are beautiful stories. When I wrote Motherless Daughters, I had interviewed women extensively, like you mentioned, Tanisha, but I was only taking like little pieces of their story, like a paragraph or two at a time, and popping it into the book. And I felt like these are fully formed narratives. They're so beautiful, and no one gets to see them except for me. So I went back to the publisher and said, what do you think about doing a Letters from Motherless Daughters book? Because I feel like these stories deserve to be shared with other people. Of course, we needed permission from the letter writers. That was a given. So I sent letters to all the women who had written letters that, were quite extensive and full, and asked, if they would give permission for their letter to appear in the book. 100% of them said yes. They all felt like if my story can help one person, then I'm willing to put it out there. So that's how that book came to be. That was my second book, Letters from Motherless Daughters.
Yeah, I'm so glad that you put the letters in there because it just adds to the book, you know.
I think it
Yeah.
gives the women the opportunity to tell their stories in greater detail, which is something that they didn't, they read Motherless Daughters and they felt like, oh my God, there's so many women out there like me who think like I do, who feel like I do, but I didn't know that until now. And now they felt the impulse to tell their own story. And I thought their stories were important enough to be heard.
Absolutely. Tabitha, you have anything?
Yeah, I do have another question. I wanted to talk to Hope about parental trigger you said the age that, your mom dies, how that, when you come to that age, all of the different feelings that come with it. Well, my mother passed at 59 and her mother passed at 59. So
Oh,
obviously
wow.
parental trigger is something big for me. So I just wanted you to talk to about some of the ideas around that and some of the ways of navigating it, because the book did kind of mention different ways that people approach this.
Yeah.
And of course, that's something that's going to be heavy on me. And again, just heavy, God forbid that happens, and then heavy on imagine my daughter, if something does happen to me at 59, Lord forbid, my daughter will have three, both her great grandmother, her grandmother, and her mother. So again, like I said, she's in the footprint of everything that I do and think because of how I know how it feels. But yeah, just I would like you to talk about some of the ways that people navigated that and some ideas you might have as well.
Absolutely. I think the term parental trigger, if I'm remembering correctly, came from someone I interviewed named Van Pine, a really established, well-respected person in the bereavement field. We call it at Motherless Daughters, crossing the silent threshold. It is such a significant moment in the life of a daughter who's lost a mother. I do weekly support calls every Tuesday and Thursday with a wide group of motherless daughters. We are so diverse in age now, age at time of loss, race, ethnicity, religion. It's a place where everyone comes together and talks about the experience of losing a mom when they're young and how it shows up in their life today. And, and every week, the first week of every month, we do a welcome call where we welcome new members. And people can share their story. And we all put in the chat box how old we were when our mom died and what our moms died from. And a lot of women want to put in how old their mom was when she died. And it's really moving how many of these women, these moms were in their 30s, 40s, and 50s. And how many of these daughters have passed that age. You're right, Tabitha. It is such a significant threshold to cross for so many reasons. First, I want to say that it is really unusual for you to have lost your grandmother and your mother at the same age. And while it may feel like a mandate that the same thing will happen to you at 59, it's by no means a guarantee, but it does become a real, sensitive point and even a fear or an expectation that, whoa, I have to be really careful about that year. That like that's a really significant year in my female lineage. And then approaching it and reaching it and crossing it is really emotionally complex for a woman. I mean, leading up to it, there's often the fear that history is going to repeat and something's going to happen to me at the same age. 99% of the time, except in your family, we need to acknowledge that it doesn't happen at the same age. But there's always the concern that it will, and women find themselves like making decisions, doing things in the lead up to that, the just in case activities. And then when they reach that age and they go through that year, and a year is a long time to be 59, it's a long time to sit in that space. It's looking from side to side. And in your case, not just my mom is my peer, but my mom and my grandmother are the same age as me. And suddenly that doesn't seem so old, right? I mean, when I was seven, my mom died at 42. So young, right? I'm guessing maybe both of you are 42 or past 42 by now. Um, I approached 42 feeling like in my mind, my 17-year-old mind, my mom was old, like old. Like she had gone to college, she got married, she had children, she did all these things, most of her life was behind her, was how it looked to me when I was 17 because I was so young and so naive. And then I'm approaching 42 and turning 42, and I'm thinking, wow, my mom was so young. My God, 42 years old? That was only half a life. And it was so sad for me to be 42 and think my mom was so young when she died, not so old, but now so young. Because 42 is like my friends were still having babies, and I'm becoming yoga instructors and changing their careers. And they had all these lives, getting remarried, all these new starts, not ends. And then I will tell you, though, that for me, 43 was even weirder than 42. And 60 for you might feel even stranger than 59 because suddenly you're older than the women that came before you. and you're heading into experiences, age-related experiences that they didn't get to have. And now you're blazing this whole new path without role models. So I am not quite, but almost 20 years older than my mom got to be. And I feel like I'm just moving forward with without a map. And on the one hand, that's really freeing because I do feel like the future is mine to plan. I don't have any to measure it against anything and feel like I'm doing it right or doing it wrong or not pleasing my mom or not, meeting her expectations because I have no idea what she would have been like at this age. And on the other hand, it's so disorienting because I don't know where to look for reassurance or modeling. Does that make sense? Does that answer your question, Tabitha? I do want to say that within the Motherless Daughters community, there are so many women who have passed this silent threshold that back in about 2021, I think it was, a group of women in the community, and I worked with a company called Be Ceremonial that creates and helps people shape personal rituals to create
Mhm.
a ritual for women who reach and pass that age. And it's on the website at hopeedelman.com on the resources page, suggestions for how to mark that occasion because society and the culture doesn't really acknowledge that this is a very big deal. It's
Mhm.
a very, very big deal to become
Okay.
older than your mom got to be. So we do have a ritual and a ceremony that is can be very individually curated and designed to be meaningful to each person and not imposed on them as something
Mhm.
that you should do.
Okay. All right. So the group that you talked about, is that a resource on hopeedelman.com? That's that group that you're speaking of?
Yeah, it's a weekly group. We have three. We have one on Tuesday evenings. We from it's 5 o'clock PT. Are you all on East Coast time mostly?
No, Central.
Okay, so it's 7 p.m. Central Time on a Tuesday or 1 p.m. Central Time on a Thursday. The Thursday calls international because then women from the UK and the EU can join us in their evening. And then on Thursday evening, we have a call just for women who lost moms in the last 2 years so that their more immediate bereavement needs can be met. That one's led by a therapist on
Okay.
Thursday evenings. And it's our real low cost option. It's $59 a month with scholarships for people for whom that's too much.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you.
Sure.
Tabitha, she wants to know that she answered your question. We
And
weren't able to hear your
yeah,
response.
I said that she did. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Mhm.
Um, okay, so you talked about in the introduction as well, when a mother dies, a daughter a daughter's mourning never completely ends. I want you to explain that and also what is the difference between grieving and mourning. Let's go to the basic.
Ooh, okay. Well, what I mean is that we never stop missing her. We never stop wishing she was here. Maybe we never stop having these things called grief spikes or triggers, like when her favorite song comes on the radio. And I want to normalize that for people. I mean, Mama died more than 40 years ago. And there are still moments when I tear up if like Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons come on the radio. I know it sounds kind of silly, but that she liked, those songs. And it makes me think of her and it makes me miss her and it makes me feel sad that she died so young. And that's okay. I want to validate those feelings and normalize them for women. Grief is typically the emotion that we feel. This is the distinction made in the bereavement world. Mourning are the behaviors, that come from those emotions. But when I wrote the book, The After Grief, which was published about 4 or 5 years ago, it was because I think of that as Motherless Daughters for Grown-ups. That's this book. It's also out in paperback. You get it in paperback now. I wanted to look at what is it like, 20 years later, 30 years later. What is it? What's normative, at that? I don't like the word normal because that means that there's abnormal, as the binary, but I think normative, which is just like if most people feel that way, that feels normal for our population. Um, Looking at what should we expect, 5 years later, 10 years later, 20 years later, and to validate and normalize that for people because the old message about bereavement is that we get to a stage of acceptance and then we're done, right? We're not going to miss that person again. Maybe we'll think of them, but we shouldn't have these strong emotions that come up around our grief. And so I think that's what I meant by that, that it's okay if 20 or 30 years later you still really miss your mom and tear up and wish she were here. At some point, especially if you're young when your mom dies, there's probably going to be a shift from feeling like focusing on what you lost and didn't have and becoming aware of what she lost and didn't get to have. And that's something else that a lot of daughters carry forward is sadness for our moms, for her not getting to meet their grandchildren and watching them grow, for her not getting to have phases of life that we start moving into when we grow older than her. And that's, I think, a really unacknowledged part of grief. And I wanted to just bring it to light and let people know, yeah, that's real. And that's okay. If you're feeling that, it doesn't mean that you grieved wrong. It doesn't mean that your grief was incomplete. It's part of what I call the long arc of loss. It's just, it's out there. And if you get there and then you feel that, it's perfectly okay. And that there are people out here that you can, connect with and who will really understand that and get it and support you through that when it happens.
When your mom died, like you stated before, there was no support services for grieving families. And by the time your book was released, things were better. And the Dougie Center for Grieving Children they had training facilities in other states and having weekend camps. How did people cope with grief prior to having all these resources like we do now?
Ooh, I'm going to tell you, not well, Tanisha, not well. Um, Not at least not for children, because the belief was that children grieved like adults. And if your child looked like they were okay, if they're playing outside during the funeral or the wake, and if they go back to school and they seem to be doing okay in their classes, that they're fine. They're resilient. I mean, those were the messages we got back then. uh, Adults didn't understand that children grieve really differently than adults, that it's going to come in bits and pieces, and that they can only tolerate the strong feelings of sadness for a short period of time. And it will come out often in outbursts later in life. So, how do people cope back then? In silence, usually, by internalizing the messages that you need to be strong and carry on. And that didn't make room for the feelings of missing a mom or losing her. It often meant back in the 80s and even the 90s, and in some families and cultures even today, it means putting on a mask and for the outside world and hiding your feelings from everyone because you feel like there's no safe place to share them, which is why Motherless Daughters exists, to give women a safe place where it's okay to come and talk about this. And be really honest. A lot of families can't tolerate other people's grief. Tanisha, did you come from a family that was willing to talk about your mom's death and your mom's life? Because what often happens is that daughters get daughters who are younger when their moms died get disconnected from having an inner relationship with her after she dies because no one will talk about her. And what I find is that when I work with daughters who are adults when their moms died, they're looking for ways to stay connected to their mom. And the women whose loss was really far in the past are looking for ways to reconnect with her because that connection was broken. So did your family talk about her and do you still feel connected to her?
Well, with my family, I only have one sister, and she's 7 years older than me, and she talks about my mom every day,
Is that
every
nice?
day.
Do you feel that's
Sometimes,
like good enough, too much? I mean,
sometimes it's overwhelming
yeah.
for me, you know, because I'm pretty much the strong one in my family. So I feel like I'm going through grief too. And so I feel like talking, I mean, we have a good time. I mean, sometimes, we're just laughing and memories and all that, but it's like every day, it's every conversation. And I'm just like, okay. And I let her talk and I let her get it out. For me, um, I have more of an inner thing that I'm dealing with. It's more inner. I don't really, I guess, express how I'm feeling. We were talking about it the other day, and she was like, "Yeah, everybody told me when when you went to, um, see my mom as soon as she passed." Um, she said everybody was calling me and telling me, your sister, she's doing really well, she's really calm. And she was like, I didn't want to hear that, why are you so calm? Our mom just died. And I was laughing and I was just telling her that, she was thinking I'm, supposed to be just like falling out. And it wasn't in me to do it. And but I knew exactly what she meant. And I felt like I should be doing it, but that's just not me per se, So I told her I really was just, I had so much to do, and when I got there, I was just, I think I was more shocked than anything because it was suddenly. And
Oh, wow.
I think I was more numb than anything too. And I stayed numb for quite a while, but I knew I had to take care of things immediately. So
Hmm.
somebody had to be level headed, and it was me. But I
Yeah.
always told my mom, and I tell my sister all the time that we talked about this. We talked about this. I talked to my mom about this all the time about when, what would happen if she passed away. And I told her, I'm going to be the one handling everything because your daughter is not going to be, you know, capable to do anything. She's not going to be any help for me. And it went just like I thought it was going to be, like exactly, And so I knew that I was not preparing for the moment, but I wanted to just make sure that when that moment happens, I would have everything in place and know what to do. I was more nervous than anything. I couldn't believe the day had actually come. And I just did what I had to do with
You're
ease.
talking about something that's so common, especially, when if you're like in your 20s or older when your mom dies, which is that there's an incredible amount of administrative work that has to take place often after a mother dies. And that can really complicate grieving. And so you taking over that role in your family may have created space for your sister to work through her emotions, but that meant that you may have had to push yours to the side to get everything done. There's all the paperwork. There might be clearing out an apartment or a house. There might be the sale of a condo. It could be anything, but and it's protracted. Those things don't just take a week or two to resolve. They can, in some cases, take years if, there's an estate to settle and possessions to distribute. And so it is not at all uncommon when you're an adult who loses your mom to feel like you're not connecting with the feelings of loss for like a year or two afterwards. And so you may have what we call an acute grief phase, which is really feeling those feelings further down the road because you have had to focus on the logistics because you're the only one who can do it. We see this a lot with only children. We see it a lot with the child in the family who's the responsible one or the one who's been tasked with it or who's the executor of the will. Was that the case for you? Do you feel like maybe there was a delayed response as a result?
Yeah, I do. I think I want to say, after everything was over, I just wanted to come home and lay down. I felt
Yeah.
like my whole world had been like turned upside down within minutes, within seconds, just from one phone call. And I was like, I need to lay down. It has been a whole lot, like too much for me to even handle right now. And I want to say once everything was over with, I think that's when it all kind of came down on me, because you be so into what you have to do, and like I say, I was in charge of everything pretty much to a certain extent. And but I knew it was going to go that way. So I just had to step up to the plate and do what I needed to do. And that was my main motive was to do what you need to do, get everything done because you have no one to turn to. You know what I mean? Like in so many ways,
Yeah.
it's like everybody's looking at you. It was like almost like the camera, the lights is on you. Everyone's waiting for you, And I have all these people behind me, like, okay, we're waiting, And I was like, I got to come through,
Yeah.
And so it was a lot, but I know that God put me in that position for a reason. Um, and yeah, so I also want to tell you that someone told me before with death, like you put it at the forefront at the beginning, but at some point you have to shift it in your brain, like put it a little bit towards not so far back, but not so far forward either. Because I feel like if I put it too far forward, I won't get anything done. Like I can't, and that's what my thing is with my sister. Like I can't if I was like how she dealt with things, I feel like I wouldn't be able to move forward if I just
Yeah.
wake up and just every day it's all about my mom all the time. I wouldn't be able to even function. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I have to push it back a little bit for me
Yeah.
in order to do what I need to do, meaning work, leaving out the house, just doing whatever, my everyday life. I have to push it back.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so I want to just introduce you to this theory of bereavement, which I think is one of the most popular ones right now, and for good reason. And it has an incredibly clunky and clinical name, which is called the dual process model of bereavement, which I think doesn't really do it justice because it explains what a lot of us go through when we experience a major loss. But it talks about how when someone dies, we swing back and forth between two different states of being. And one is called, it's the emotional state where we're processing the feelings of loss and we're talking about it and we're missing that person and we're feeling distress and sorrow. And on the other side, it's like a pendulum that swings back and forth, are what are called the restorative activities, like going to work and, taking care of your kids if you have them, or, your dad if he's still alive, and doing the administrative tasks if you're an adult. And so, or if you're younger, like being with your peer group and going to school. And so it's pretty well established that people swing back and forth between those two places. And young children will go into that place of feeling sorrow only for a little bit. And then they swing right back into being with their friends and being at school. And if you're a teenager, trying to feel normal. If you're an adult, you may have to swing back here in order to go to work or get the estate work done or whatever it is. I think what you're maybe describing is that your sister spent more time over here in the emotional part of it. And maybe because she could, because you were taking care of the stuff over here. But, everyone has a different balance and it depends on your personality and it depends on what's going on in your life at that time and what your needs are. I mean, if you're a single mom raising children, you can't spend all your time over here because you got to earn a living and take care of your kids over here. So you just sort of dip in over here when you can. It's also a myth that because siblings lost the same mom, they're going to have the same experience of losing her. It's not true at all. I mean, they're probably the closest people in the world to understand what you lost, but that doesn't mean they're having the same experience. So, sometimes we're just swinging back and forth. And it's not even like it should be 50-50. Our mind goes binary, like, well, I spend half my time here and half my time here. That's not the case. It's just important that you honor both sides and find the balance that's right for you. And the balance that's right for you this month might be really different than the balance that's right next month. And so, especially as an adult, the administrative tasks might be taking up most of your time. So, and that then it's just really helpful to acknowledge I need to spend a little bit of time over here to process those feelings. Maybe I can't get to them now, but let's remember I got to step over there for a little bit, even though it's painful, even though it hurts, because it's important that I have some space or time to, let those feelings work through me. And, if you're over here and you can't get back over there to do any of your administrative work, that's when we see people get into sometimes complicated grief where they can't function in the real world because they're so consumed with all of the emotional part of the loss. But typically, people, swing back and forth until over time they eventually spend more time over here, enjoying their lives again, getting back to laughter and moments of joy. But occasionally they're going to swing back here because they still miss their mom. And that's okay, as long as we don't get stuck here, in cycles and, going around and around and around and not able to function in this world anymore. The going back and forth and the friction between the two is considered to be really necessary for long-term adjustment. Does that make sense?
Yes, definitely. Yeah, definitely. It does make sense. Um, Shamika, I see you just came in. Did you have anything to share? Okay, we'll come back to her later. Shakina, did you have anything to share?
Um, no, this has been um sorry, my child is in the background singing. I I'm one of the ones that I have not lost a mother. While I am not close with my mother, I don't consider it a loss, just an absence, you know. And so I related to some things in the book, but I can never say that right now. I can't say that I've lost my mother. I have lost my father, but that is a different kind of loss. And in reading some of this book, I guess I didn't realize that it is, while they're both difficult, there's both grief to it. It is a vastly different losing a mother and then a father. And I don't think I understood that because I haven't per se lost my mother. There's just an absence. She's just absent. Um, but it was an interesting read, and I've been listening and learning a lot from everybody and getting an understanding of what it's like for those. I have other friends who've lost mothers, and I always lumped it in the same category of losing a parent, but it is two different losses.
There's some overlap, but there's also a lot of difference. It's true. Yeah.
Hey everyone, this is Shadika. I'm multitasking, so I won't be able to be on camera. But yeah, I've just been listening, and it's such a fascinating discussion because um over the summer I lost my mom, and then a week later I lost my dad, who was the man who raised
Ah,
not my biological father, but my little brother. I'm the oldest. I'm the one that everyone looks to be the leader. And so my little brother and sister lost their biological dad, but he was the man that raised me. So it was a huge loss back to back. And both of them, all of my, I have two siblings, but he also had other children that were my stepbrothers, all older than us, and they just all grieved in such different ways.
yeah.
And so it kind of compounded the grief for us because we lost our mom and then we lost our dad. And our brothers just like one just blocked us and just didn't want to deal with anything. And he did that when his mom passed. So I kind of wasn't surprised, but it was hard. It was just so much resentment amongst my little brother and sister about how their siblings were handling it. So it just made me go, well, I just lost my mom. They lost their biological father. And my brother even said it at my funeral. Well, you still have your dad. And I'm like, but Paul raised me. Like, like he's more of a father to me than my biological father. But he's like, yeah, but you still
Yeah.
have your dad. And he said it like almost like accusatory. And it was just it was a lot.
Right. Megan Devine, who wrote the book It's Okay That You're Not Okay, about loss, any loss, calls that the grief Olympics, where people feel the need to have a competition. Like, my loss is bigger than yours. It's my biological dad, not your biological dad. You have
Right.
a very legitimate loss. This was the father that raised you, right? This was the
Yep.
one who was there for you in so many ways. That's a very valid loss. But there must have been something in your sibling that felt like they needed more recognition or weren't getting it, or I mean, we don't know, right? Only they can say, but it does. There sometimes develops among grievers a competition, like whose worst loss is bigger or worse than somebody else's. And that speaks to their need to be seen and heard and validated, some more than the validity of your loss. But it still hurts when they say that. I hear that, but I just want to validate that losing a parent who raised you and was there for you is a very valid loss. It may be different from theirs, it may be a different experience, but I don't know that it's any less painful. Certainly. I'm really sorry. 1 week apart, did you say, Shanika?
I really believe that they were no longer together, but they still loved each other. And I believe that my stepfather, he heard what happened, and then they said he just stopped eating and lost a little lip. So they called us and said, "Oh, he's going in a hospice." And literally the next day, we thought we had a couple of weeks because they lived in two different states. So we were already mobilized around my mother's funeral and her need, like whatever
Wow.
needs that were associated with laying her to rest in one state. And then we got the call, he's going in a hospice. And so I'm like kind of guiding them because they kind of, both my little brother and sister, they're like over 10 years younger than me. So I literally would raise them because my mother needed my help. So they looked to me, and we would all joke about that. They looked to me more as a mom than they did her.
Yeah.
So when this happened, it was like, okay, well, let's start making preparations for you to go see him before he goes. And then the next day, they said he's gone. And it really took like, I felt like we had a good, everyone had their role, everyone was grieving, but we all kind of coalesced around my mom. Something about my stepdad, it just had a totally different effect.
Yeah, I hear
Um,
you.
but one thing I'll say, I've been telling people ever since my mom died, because for me, I felt destabilized after she passed away, and we were not that close. But I was a dutiful daughter, that kind of thing, and so I was not expecting it to hit me so hard. I had, worked past all of our issues and just accepted where we were. And I had been in therapy, and I just, I would have friends who had lost their parents, and like 5 years, 10 years, 20 years later, they were still grieving like it happened yesterday. And I used to just always like, oh, that's not going to be me. But when it happened, oh, what this is about. I my friends, I'm like, I
Yeah.
don't know where this is coming from. But I feel like the energetic cord that tethers me to this world got taken away. My mother died. And I'm like, I get it now. And I like kind of said I'm so sorry for like not understanding all those times I had friends going through this. I get it now. And literally travel. I was at the airport. A lady is like, "Oh, I told her, "Oh, I lost my mother 20 years ago. I still have all her stuff in my storage." And then another woman comes over, "Oh, I lost my mom." I was like, I feel like I got inducted or initiated into a club. I'm like,
It's true, right? It's such a perspective shifter, and it really helps us understand that sort of just the experience in a way that we couldn't before. And then we just want to seek out other people who understand that experience because so many of our peers don't. I
yeah,
really hear you on that, Shanika. Yeah, I mean, some people that I know, affectionately or humorously refer to it as the Dead Moms Club, which I think just, an expression of the dark humor that, we often feel and
yeah,
sometimes need. But it very much is, knowing what it's like to have lost a mom and how maybe we didn't understand why 5 years later someone would still be feeling it so deeply. And then it happens to us, and it's like, oh, I get it now. I get it. I'm part of that. I'm part of that group. Yeah. Thank you.
I kind of want to go back to what Shakina was saying. Um, she was saying that losing a father is different from losing a mother. And in the book, it said the Harvard Child Bereavement Study found that a mother loss is harder on children than father loss.
Yeah.
And I wanted to explain why that is.
I think in the Harvard Child Bereavement Study, it was because the mother is usually, for two reasons. One is the mother is usually the emotional center of the family, and to lose that was harder on the kids because if a dad dies, you still have that person who's attending to your emotions. Not in every family, though, but in many. In some families, the dad fulfills that role. But it was also because the children's daily routine would change more if a mom died, typically, and the dad would have to make some big changes in order to accommodate that. And so the kids' lives on a day-to-day basis might change more, and that was really disruptive for them. So I think it was for those two reasons that the bereavement study outlined that mother loss was harder for children to adapt to in the short term, certainly, than father loss. But that, oftentimes we know that if a dad dies, that might mean that the family's economic circumstances change, their living circumstances might need to change, but that still seemed to be less disruptive for the children than losing their emotional center.
Can I just make a comment about that? It's so funny because if you look on social media, I feel like it's a no-brainer. There are so many like skits or just memes about mom versus dad. And I'll just do one, but I see so many. So it's like you ask dad, I need to find X, like where is it? And you ask mom, I need to find X, where is it? And like they'll like show a series of different people in different households doing it. And the mom is like, oh, it's right, it's here, and they know exactly where it is. Dad is like, he calls it the wife.
Ask mom. It's
Yeah,
so
ask
true.
mom. Ask mom. Yep. They
Yeah,
did one where they
it's
asked
so
the dad
true.
some personal questions about the kids, like who's their best friend? What sports do they play? And then they ask the mom. The mom answers all the questions, hands down. The dad is just looking at the mom like, I don't know. So
True.
I feel like when you see that, and I just thought it was funny, but you see it so much, you start to really see the different role of a mom versus a dad.
In many
Oh
families,
my
yes.
goodness.
And I do work with a lot of women for whom their parents were already split or their dad had never been part of their life or their dad died first. But when the parents are together at the time of the mother's death, that's when I think the Harvard Child Bereavement stats, really
Mhm.
come to light. But Shanika, yes, and again, that's not all families, but it does seem to be the majority of families when the
I
parents
watch those
are together.
videos. I watch those all the time, and I am just in awe of the lack of knowledge. I think there was one guy on the street. He was asking him his kids' middle names. He had no clue. He was like, "When are their birthdays?" I think one's in June. And then there was another one. He was like, "Does your son have any allergies?" And he was like, "No." The kid was like, "I'm allergic to penicillin." And I'm like, something like that. You like, what do you mean? You don't know that your child is allergic to penicillin. I feel like
Mhm.
that's at like the top of the list of knowledge to know about your child, at least, is that he's allergic to penicillin because that could actually kill him.
Mhm. That is. I want to offer a very interesting perspective, and hope maybe you can kind of speak to what that means. Um, I was raised by a very involved father, right? Like he was the one to go to PTA meetings. When we went on field trips, they would say, "Everyone ask your mom, tap to ask your dad." Like he was and is a very, present grandfather, father. And so I married a man exactly like that because, I don't expect anything less. Like my daughter, she was home with her dad for the first 3 years of his life. He wasn't even a stay-at-home dad. He still worked, you know, but even with that, the loss of my mother was still, cavernous. Even with my dad being
Good word.
very, what I mean? So it's not even, I can't say that like, well, my dad is a stranger to me. That wasn't the case. And my parents were alive when he passed, when she passed. But even with my dad being a very present, in some cases, they were both present, but like I said, when it came to school, it was all him. When it came to a lot of stuff, it was all him. And me and my mother were best friends when I became an adult, of course. But I'm wondering, what does that even still mean? Like, what is it about that connection to the mom even when even when again dad was very present, okay, even like and I was going to ask, and I just want to add another part because Shanika was saying like she wasn't even close with her mom and she still felt that. I was going to ask you about that too, like how women who don't have a close relationship with their mom and their mom passed almost have two grievances to deal with.
Yeah,
One, the
true.
death of their mother, and two, the death of someone that'll never be. like never go to that therapy session or never become the mother that they want. And when she dies, you have to accept that. You know what I mean? So I'm just, I just really want to talk about kind of the connections that we have to moms that make, whether we were close or not to them, whether we're close to our father or not, what makes it so cavernous and so kind of, debilitating in a way.
Cavernous is such a good word. I think part of it is that same-sex identification, and boys may feel the loss of their father more similarly to that cavernous aspect that girls feel when their mom dies, because we identify with them on such a bodily level, But I also think that if boys got most of their nurturing from their mom, that is a profound loss for them too. There's no question about it. But what you're saying is 100% right, that if you didn't have a close and warm, loving relationship with your mom, but always wanted to and hoped that one day you might, and then she dies, you're grieving two losses. You're grieving the loss of what was and what could have been, or maybe would have been one day if the two of you had been able to get there. And there are all kinds of exercises, that women do or can do to try to, resolve that feeling of unfinished business with their mom, or of the relationship that could have been, that maybe they always wanted, but for whatever reasons couldn't access when she was alive. I don't, there's a lot of research coming out now that I've been very intrigued by, especially having two daughters of my own, that mothers carry their children's cells in their bodies for the rest of their life. Like there are certain fetal cells from your child that still exist in your body as a mother. And I just wonder if like it's some like really like woo-woo level, there's just this connection between mothers and their children, that is so deeply biophysiological that kids just don't have with their dads because that doesn't exist. It's like I'm carrying my children around in my body every day, wherever I go, or some of their cells, their DNA, that's half mine and half their dad's. And that's kind of mind blowing to think about, that connection, because I hear a lot of moms say, my child's in distress and I can feel it, or children saying, I knew the moment my mom died, I woke up in the middle of the night. I don't know if I hear that more because I work with mother loss, or if because it's more common to have that in the mother-daughter connection or the mother-child connection than it is in the father-child connection. The father-child connection, of course, is really important on so many levels, especially Tabitha, if you had a dad like yours. And if your daughter has a dad like yours, it sounds like. Um, a lot of women just don't have that connection with their dad, so that connection with the mom is so much more important and primary. Hey, Shanika, good to see you.
Hey,
Hopping on in your car. How you doing? Great to see you.
I good to see you too. I wanted to add to that. So yeah, there is for me a very woo experience. Like I could detail it from the moment that I got the call. It was clear energetically, but I am someone who's into metaphysics, physics. I am someone who's spiritual. I'm someone who gets messages from the other side, and then I'm surrounded by people like that. So for me, I instantly felt like the portal, this is how it came to me. The portal through which I entered into this world is gone. And I've never been like suicidal or anything like that in my adult life. And just a rock solid, like stable, very clear, I want to be here. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not really sure why I want to be here anymore. It was all physical. It was
Wow.
metaphysical. It wasn't emotional. It wasn't even like psychological. I'm a trained psychologist. I could factor in that there was a metaphysical change. And that's when my spirit guide said, losing your mother is a type of initiation, and you need to go through this. This is an initiation. You're being initiated into a special group. And I to
Wow.
speak on the healing process, when it's like someone said, having two deaths. I was very aware because of my spiritual background of my destiny, my mother's destiny, all of these things. So I had done a lot of the healing of just being at peace with where she was while she was living. Um, I made peace. I literally laid the ideal mom to rest. I actually manifested another one. I had like a extra mom because I was like, well, this is what I need in this lifetime. But the beautiful thing about this experience is the relationship I have with her now that she's gone. I am someone who has an ancestral altar. I'm someone who prays to my ancestors regularly. Like the things that I've been able to experience with her from the other side have been so powerful. So whatever I lost then, I'm gaining that and much more. I
Yeah.
had people I had people who read these kinds of things tell me messages. She was sending me such specific messages, and a lot of them were like, I couldn't see it when we were together. I see it now. I understand now. I'm sorry for this.
I'm so glad you brought this up because when I wrote the After Grief, I looked at the five elements of grief, like the five components that we're working through when someone really close to us dies. And there's the physical, which is like how our bodies respond. There's the intellectual, which is our mind trying to make sense of it. There's the emotional, which is all the feelings that come up. There's the social, which is the need for support from a community. But there's also the spiritual, and I feel like that one gets a lot of short shrift because the spiritual is often conflated with religious, and that is a part of it, right? Our belief systems and our religious communities. But it also includes the existential, which are these big questions that we ask, like where did someone go and how do I find them? And what's going to happen to me one day? And will I see them again? But it's also the metaphysical. I really believe in that. And I don't, I feel like not everyone is willing to explore that, but those of us who are find that there's a lot there to discover. So thank you for bringing that up, Shanika. I'm so interested that you're a psychologist and you have this feeling. I'd love to hear from you sometime if you want to drop me a line, because I'm so interested in the intersection of the two, the science and the metaphysical.
So what's so interesting is in my religious background, I reconnected with my ancestral religion, which is Yoruba. So in Yoruba, I
Oh,
am an
yeah.
initiated priest of Ifa, which deals with destiny. So as soon as I learned about this, I was so fascinated. I wanted to know about my mom's destiny, my dad's destiny, my stepdad's destiny, my destiny. Why did all these traumatic things happen? And I got answers. And then to also have the psychology part, and my mom used to always say when I went to school, because I was that obnoxious person that was like learning all these psychological theories and sharing them with my family, and my mother would be like, don't psychologicize me. So when I would like share things about what I thought was going on with our dynamic, she would like just shut it down. So I just never got a chance to explore all that with her. But yeah, the combination of the psychology and the destiny piece just gave me a lot of answers and healing that I needed. Those were the things I needed. Everyone's different.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that, especially at the end of the call. I feel like that was like sort of like our little gift at the end to hear about that. Thank you.
No, thank
Shanika,
you. I love your expertise. It's so rare to be able to talk to someone or hear from someone who's done this much work around this issue. And I've recently heard of a thing called death doulas. And even
yeah,
that I just find so fascinating. Like there are people who usher you through this process. So I look at what you're doing as sort of helping in that process of healing.
thank you so much. This has been such a pleasure. Tanisha, I can't thank you enough for having me on. I have to be somewhere at 12:30, so I'm going to have to bounce soon.
Oh,
But
no problem. We're just happy to have you on here
such a
today to
pleasure.
answer some questions. That's all.
What a treat. I've loved talking to all of you, and I'd love to continue the conversation. Feel free to drop me a line anytime.
Oh,
And
before you go, I do want you to tell people where they can find you
oh,
and where the Chicago-based Motherless Daughters is located, so we can maybe tap into there too. So
you all are in Chicago?
yes.
Oh, okay. I don't think I knew that. That's great. I went to college in Chicago. I love that town. Um, I don't think there is a Chicago chapter for Motherless Daughters right now that I'm aware of. Most of what's happening now is virtual and online. But I'm at hope@hopeedelman.com. It's so simple. And you can also look up resources at motherlessdaughters.com. We have all kinds of retreats and services. I mean, our retreats mainly are for women who were under 21 when their moms died, but our online groups are for mother loss at any age. And we have a special one on Thursday nights just for women who lost mothers in the last 2 years. And that's not hard and fast. That is, you can be 3, 4 years if, you feel like you had all the admin work and now you're just getting to it at year 2. That's fine. You're welcome to join us.
Okay. Well, thank you for, like I said, thank you again for just taking time out of your busy schedule to come in and join with our group. And we appreciate you coming on. And we'll, of course, read your books and share with other people as well.
Thank you so much. Let's stay in
Yeah.
touch. I really appreciate it. Have a beautiful Sunday, all of you.
You
You too.
Have
too.
a
Thank you,
good
Hope.
one.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.